Thank you all so much for joining us. For those of you I haven't had the chance to meet yet, my name is Cameron Smith. I work in the Center for Career Development here at the College of Holy Cross, primarily with students interested in science, technology, engineering, as well as the health and life sciences. And thrilled to be joined by a Holy Cross alum today who's going to tell us a little bit more about themselves, their pathway, what they're doing now, and how it really is that they're kind of using that Holy Cross education out in the real world. So, Seth, love to kind of have you introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cameron. So I'm Seth Sullivan. I was a physics major at Holy Cross, and now I'm at the University of Delaware, and I'm getting my PhD in biomedical engineering, doing neuroscience research in the Cashback Lab.
Fantastic. Um, and then thinking about sort of like going from the College of Holy Cross, did you step right into this the PhD world, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so one of the things I did my senior year, going into my senior year, is I did research with Paul Oxley. So that was kind of like my first foray into official research, and then I did go right into the PhD program at UD.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like really your research is kind of sort of in this neuroscience, biomechanics, robotics. Could you talk a little bit about sort of what it is that you're investigating and really what excites you about that?
Yeah, so our lab studies decision making, movement, and learning for human movement. So it's kind of like behavioral psychology in a way, but our output, instead of like answering a question verbally, is through movement. And so we can study how people make movement decisions, are able to control their movements, and how they learn to move optimally. And so my research specifically is more about the decision making and movement control. And specifically, it's actually in human-human interaction. So how do we make decisions with one another or move with one another? And so like a perfect example would be like moving a couch with your friend, right? So you need to like move the couch around and then know what they're doing and use the sensory information of them to move the couch successfully. So that's kind of what our research does there.
There we go. Okay. So that the kind of pivot style piece is really what we're focusing on then. That we're not getting trapped in the stairwell like an episode of Friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. So was this the research that you were doing with Professor Oxley and kind of during that senior year? Was that really what spurred this idea of I want to pursue research? I want this to be my next step. I'm thinking about a PhD. How did that kind of evolve over time, maybe throughout Holy Cross or really during that senior experience?
Yeah, so I think one thing I've always been interested in is like why questions, which is a really great thing for physics. Physics promotes that and has like really grown that into me. And then when I did research with Professor Oxley, I really enjoyed doing that, and I was actually doing some modeling and simulation with him, and I was like, oh, this is like really cool. Like I can like quickly test things just like with the computer instead of having to do it in real life. And then so I actually am doing that now in my research as well. So I'm able to model and simulate like the human movement behavior.
Incredible. I want to get back to that in a second about the kind of how you're using the thought process and the skills you really learned as a physics
Mhm.
major now in your research. But curious, in researching, applying to discovering, identifying PhD programs, what did that sort of process look like? What was that timeline like during your senior year and
Mhm.
getting into that? Because we do have a lot of students that think about that as a next step.
Yeah, so the summer before my senior year, I was basically just Googling labs. So just keywords that I was interested in. I was like biomechanics lab, neuromechanics lab, stuff like that. And then when I found specific professors' research that I was interested in, I actually just like cold emailed them, and I would say like 80% of them, 90% of them responded, and 70% of them met with me one-on-one actually. So my advice would be don't be afraid to just cold email professors, and they're really willing to um, interact with you and tell you about their research and that. So that's what I did in the summer, and then I kind of narrowed that list down going into the fall, and I applied to the programs that I was interested in, and the professors said that they had open spots for their lab.
That's great. Oh, fantastic. Um, And so we were talking a little about this before the interview really started, but this idea of kind of how you see your physics background influencing the work that you're doing on a daily basis, the skills that you gained in the classroom and in the lab work. Are there particular kind of skills, frameworks from physics that you're really relying on a day-to-day, both in the research and kind of post-grad?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I specifically use uh, any of the like physics, math, or
Yeah.
equations that I am. I'm kind of using some mechanics, some classical mechanics stuff, which is nice. But really the main thing that's helped me the most is just breaking down problems into component parts and then kind of piecing it back together to find a solution, right? And so that's the main skill set that I feel like I've learned from my physics education. That applies to any problem solving scenario, whether it's like a literature review or coming up with an experimental design or actually doing some modeling where I have to use formal mathematical equations.
It's great. And so it sounds like the work you're doing is really kind of interdisciplinary, drawing on a lot of different things. Curious kind of how that, like reflecting back to your time at Holy Cross, this liberal arts education, the taking classes outside of physics, how has it really kind of like shaped your approach and where do you sort of see that like playing into your day to day?
Yeah, so I think the really nice thing about my PhD is it's drawing upon all these different fields. And the reason I'm so comfortable doing that is really because I took a bunch of different classes at Holy Cross, which have different kind of styles of critical thinking. And then you can kind of start to see how areas of critical thinking in one field might apply to another field, and you can kind of think differently than everyone else in that field. And so I think that's super important just in whatever job you do, but especially in a PhD program where you need to kind of combine information from different fields and then put them together in some unique way. So all the classes I took at Holy Cross were, even though I didn't really want to take like history or English at Holy Cross, they turned out being pretty valuable just in terms of critical thinking.
That's fantastic. Are there specific ones that if, you could go back or you could give advice to a current undergrad to say like, hey, this is a good piece to know about, and I've weirdly called back upon, Battle of the Bulge or something I learned in a history class, that I would not have thought was going to play into my day to day. Are there classes that kind of come to mind that you're like, that was a good one, that was cool?
Yeah, so my senior year, I got to take two really cool classes that I think about a lot. One was predictive coding in the brain, which was a psychology course. And so that was just about how our brain is, making these predictions in the world and using that information to move throughout the world successfully, which is like pretty much exactly what I'm doing in my PhD now, which is awesome. And then the other one was actually a psychology physics crossover class. It was neuroethology with physics. And so that was really awesome. So that's just about animal behavior and then using equations to describe animal behavior with the physics aspect, which is also kind of exactly what I'm doing now with human behavior and human movement. So those two classes I really reflect on, and I'm super glad that I got a chance to take those.
That's great. That's very cool. Are there outside of the classroom, thinking about sort of other experiences, clubs and organizations, intramurals, athletics, things that you were doing that were kind of really formative in your Holy Cross experience that would not have been the same, Holy Cross would not have been the same if you hadn't have done those?
Yeah, so I was on the club basketball team, which was super awesome. I love being a part of a team like that. I was a practice player on the women's basketball team as well, so that was really fun being involved in like a really competitive scenario like that. And
Yeah.
then I also did I was an intern with the strength and conditioning coaches. And so that was really awesome. That kind of like cultivated my interest in like human movement.
Okay.
So I was always interested in like how people moved. And then I was like watching athletes. I was like, why does this person move that way? And why does this person move a different way? And so that kind of like cultivated that interest in human movement as well.
And were those sort of like premeditated in, I want to do this? Was that more of coming out of high school, having been a basketball player, I want to continue
Mm.
to have this in my life? How did you sort of like stumble upon those opportunities?
Yeah, so I always liked basketball and I planned on playing at least in the club team. And then just being around the basketball team, I don't even remember how I stumbled upon being a practice player in the women's basketball team. There's probably an email or something that went out, and I did that. But the strength and conditioning, I wasn't interested in much in high school, but I got interested because I was interested in like performance for basketball. And one time I was just playing up at the Heart Center and I ran into the head strength and conditioning coach, Jeff Oliver. And I was like, hey, like I'm interested in this. Like, are there any like internship opportunities? He was like, yeah, you can join. So it was just like this happenstance thing that happened that I'm very lucky and grateful that it happened.
We are big fans of happenstance theory here in the Center for Career Development. I think that sort
Hmm.
of not being afraid to ask and not being afraid to get a no
Yeah.
occasionally, but it really does. It tends to work out, and it's amazing to see how that's all kind of tying into what you're doing now.
Hmm.
Do you find in kind of this like PhD lifestyle that you're getting the opportunity to still kind of pursue some of those like play basketball, get out, do these things that sort of like bring enjoyment and really kind of give you that holistic, perspective? Do you get to do that now with that PhD schedule?
Yeah, that's the nice part about being a PhD is you're really in control of your own schedule. So you have free time to do lots of stuff. I mean, you have to work hard and all that, right? But your daily hours are pretty flexible. And I actually did play on the club basketball team for 2 years here at UD as well. So I continued my career to the University of Delaware for club basketball.
Okay. Oh, very
Yeah.
cool.
Mhm.
That's great. So I think thinking back at knowing that we're going to have sort of undergrads taking a look at this, prospective students, whomever else, is there advice that you would want to give to Holy Cross students, especially those sort of majoring in physics or STEM or considering graduate school and kind of research careers? Are there things that you'd want them to know or you wish you would have known when you were going through this process here?
Yeah, I think my main point of advice would be to take lots of different classes, which, Holy Cross already promotes that enough. So, but lots of classes and maybe things you're not quite interested in at the time because it's hard to tell what you're going to be interested in without actually doing it, right? So I took a lot of different classes and I'm really thankful that I did that and it kind of like led to me getting to where I am and being interested in neuroscience. So if there's a class that's like kind of interesting and you're not sure if you want to take it, I would definitely suggest that you do that. Yeah.
That's great. And then the sort of the supports you had as you were going through this process, as far as conversation partners, mentors, folks that were sort of answering those questions, writing letters of rec, kind of pushing you in those right directions. It sounds like Professor Oxley was influential in that and kind of giving the research
Mhm.
experience. Are there other folks that you would, recommend folks either seek out specific faculty members or just faculty members in general who can kind of help with that process across campus?
In terms of
Thinking about PhDs, thinking about next
okay.
steps, who are the folks that you were having these conversations with while you were here on campus?
Yeah, so I think your academic advisor is a really good option for that. And then if you get a chance to do research, your research advisor would be a really good person to talk to. And yeah, and you can feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk about whatever experiences I've had with a PhD program so far.
That's great. Anything you wish you would have done differently while you were at Holy Cross?
I would have sought out research positions earlier.
Okay,
I only did one summer of research, and I really wish I had worked on that throughout my entire time. So if you think maybe you might be interested in research, try it early on. And if you love it, you can keep doing it. And if not, you can go in a different direction.
great. Fantastic. I know we talked a little bit, a lot about kind of this idea of the liberal arts and taking these unique classes and really kind of having a breadth and depth of experience. Final thoughts maybe on kind of how the Holy Cross experience has helped you build that foundation, not just academically, but personally in the work that you're doing today and kind of the work that you're hoping to continue after the PhD?
Yeah, I think the academic culture of Holy Cross is really important and it's very collaborative. Like I look back very fondly of all the late nights hanging out with all the physics majors and just talking about the problem sets and trying to work together. Um, and that really allows you to develop the ability to talk about technical ideas with others and being able to like properly articulate uh, hard like mathematical problems or any kind of technical problem. And so that's really what I do with my lab mates now, right? We all have these like small side conversations about technical problems where maybe one person doesn't understand as much as the other person. You need to kind of get both people on the same page. So I'm really thankful for like the collaborative nature of Holy Cross in general. And it's been really helpful for me now.
That's incredible. Um, Thinking about sort of next steps for you as kind of your PhD will wrap up. What is it that inspires you kind of about your field? Where do you hope to take this research in the future? What does the next step look like for you post the PhD?
Yeah, so I think the coolest part about the research that we do is that we have this, complex brain and complex body, right? So we have billions of neurons and tons of muscles, and we're able to control our movements pretty easily, right? And so there's this complex system, and then we can actually break down that complex system into simple mathematical equations. And so I think that's just really cool and really powerful. And so in the future, I think right now I'm doing more just behavior, but I'd love to go to more of like the neuroscience level where I'm modeling neurons and collections of neurons and stuff like that. So that really excites me to kind of go a level up into the brain further for my future.
That's great. Well, Seth, this was fascinating, really insightful. I'm incredibly grateful. I know the folks that will be watching this will be as well. Anything we didn't get to, or anything else you want to make sure we get included on the recording here?
No, I think we're all good.
Wonderful. And if students do want to reach out and kind of connect with you, is LinkedIn the best bet? How should they sort of seek you out?
Yeah, LinkedIn's great. I'm on there a decent amount, and then they can also send me an email at my UD email.
Thank you again so much. We really appreciate this. Appreciate your thoughts, your feedback, all the insight that you're sharing, and grateful for that connection and you making the connection between your undergraduate and the work that you're doing now.
Mm-hmm.